So Sam is a science communicator and events coordinator currently based in Norwich. He completed his PhD in chemistry in 2018 before pursuing work in science education and science communication. After his PhD, he worked at developing experts, making science videos linked to the national school curriculum, and then took up the role of project coordinator for Norwich Science Festival. He is also a coordinator for the Pint of Science events in Norwich. Sam, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. And hopefully you can see my screen and hear me all okay. Just wave if you can't at all. Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Sam. My pronouns are he, him. And as was just mentioned, I'm a science communicator and events coordinator in Norwich. And for this talk, what I thought I'd do is really go through journey from PhD to science communication. So a bit of my kind of more formal education background, PhD, and then how I really started off in SciComm. So doing some things alongside my PhD research, and then the two main jobs I've had in science communication since graduating in 2018. So on the more formal education background side first, I did A-levels back in 2009 in maths, chemistry and physics, and really enjoyed the chemistry. So from that, I then applied to and luckily got a integrated master's degree in chemistry, so an M-Sci degree at Imperial College London. So I moved from rural East Anglia, tiny village, to London and lived there for 4 years. And it was really towards the end of that, so 2012, 2013, in my master's project, realized that I loved lab work and research, so kind of wanted to continue from that into a PhD. And I was particularly interested in the kind of interface of chemistry and biology, and also solar energy, renewable energy as well. And luckily saw a really cool sounding PhD project in the School of Chemistry at the UEA, or the University of East Anglia in Norwich. And that was with Professor Julia Butt in the School of Chemistry. So applied for that, luckily got it and moved straight into that after my master's degree. So moved from London to Norwich, and then I've been doing the PhD from 2013, graduated in 2018. So you can see at the bottom, got my thesis printed, wrapped up end of 2017, and then got to graduate, wear the big floppy hat in 2018, after which I went into science communication. Very briefly, just on the PhD, before I talk about the science communication. So the main project was all about using bacteria to capture solar energy and make valuable chemicals. So summarized by those 3 little cartoons there was kind of a solar energy photochemistry aspect, a bit of bacteria and microbiology, and it was all about combining those two. So combining bacteria with light absorbing molecules, and then when you mix them together and shone a light on them, the bacteria would make chemicals like hydrogen. So really enjoyed the project, lots of different aspects to it. And it was also part of a doctoral training partnership. So 4 years funded through the write-up period, which was really useful. And halfway through that in 2015, did an internship away from the PhD. So this was at a company called Intelligent Fingerprinting in Cambridge. And what they do is they make devices that test for drug metabolites in sweat. So through those 4 years, really enjoyed the research, great supervisor, great group on the whole. And from the kind of main project and internship, really got a good idea of what lab work in industry and academia was like. But it was kind of during that internship, so about halfway through the PhD, I realized it wasn't just the lab work that motivated me. I also loved talking about science, meeting different people, particularly outside the university, where I could think a bit more about the kind of wider applications of the research. So it was from that I really just wanted to try and get as much experience as I could within science communication. So what I thought I'd briefly do over the next few slides is just highlight some of the things I got involved with in the second half of my PhD, so over 2 or 3 years, for 2 main reasons. One, if you're in a similar situation and you're thinking of getting some experience, perhaps this will just give you a bit of a flavor of some of the things you can try out, and obviously you can then push into different things a bit more to get some experience alongside your PhD. But also kind of actually following quite nicely from what Kirsty was saying, hopefully I've tried to link these to almost like different aspects of science communication. So that big umbrella term can actually mean lots of things. So SciComm isn't just one type of job, as Kirsty was saying about public engagement isn't just, one type of job. So what I've done is vaguely tried to link that just to some different areas to hopefully show the different faces of what science communication can be. So the top left, kind of science media and broadcasting. I've been on a few of the kind of local radio shows through BBC Radio Norfolk, and really recommend just reaching out to your local radio stations, because if they're anything like Radio Norfolk, they just loved hearing from local scientists to kind of give a bit of a science aspect and angle to some of the stories they were running, and just through the contacts there learn a lot more about the industry as well and how that links with science communication. Then in the middle, kind of vaguely, I guess, under that umbrella of science communication, things like knowledge exchange, impact, commercialization. Been very lucky to be a part of the Norfolk network for the past few years. So this is a group of local businesses, I'm sure, around Norfolk and Norwich. I'm sure there are similar ones kind of all over the UK. And that's just been a chance to meet with local businesses, actually give presentations at some of their events, and really useful for thinking about research in a wider context. So a lot of them were interested in the kind of research, the solar energy angle, you know, what's the long-term impact to your project? Are there going to be any spin-outs? What can we actually do with your solar-powered bacteria? You know, how are they actually going to impact our lives? And then the top right, kind of science policy. If you haven't seen it before, I really recommend checking out the STEM for Britain scheme. I'm not sure if it's happening at the moment because of COVID, but I did this back in 2017. It's essentially a chance to present a research poster to parliamentarians in Westminster. And I just found it really useful, again, think about the wider context of research, and got to meet loads of incredible early career researchers as well. So really great for kind of expanding my networks beyond Norwich. And then before I finish this section, just the other kind of three angles, which Kirsty touched upon really nicely from the previous talk. So there's a kind of public engagement side. I just wanted to highlight the NNSA, or the Norfolk and Norwich Science Association. So this is a wonderful group of local volunteers. It was the old local branch of the British Science Association, and when those were closed down, that transformed into the NNSA. So they do outreach events, fundraising events in the local region, and if there's local ones, I really recommend reaching out to them here. It's just a fantastic group of volunteers that do loads of different events. And I kind of highlighted that as a separate area, perhaps more science communication to adult audiences. And I think Pint of Science fits quite nicely into that as well. And then in the bottom center, the kind of science education. So I sort of separated that a little bit, perhaps to highlight science communication more for teachers, school children, homeschooling parents, and recommend checking out your kind of local branches of the Royal Society of Chemistry and Biology. Kind of done a lot of volunteering through them, which has been really useful, and also from contacts at the organisation to learn for what I wanted to do afterwards. You know, how would a psychom or public engagement career look like as part of, for example, the Royal Society of Chemistry? And then the bottom right, perhaps something that could be slightly easier as an individual to make a profile and get involved with is social media. So things like Twitter and Instagram and YouTube and TikTok. So ways that perhaps you can look into making a profile and just having a go at meeting people, sharing your research, and especially with something like Twitter, when it's those shorter, sharper, like snippets of research, perhaps you're thinking a bit more about how to get across your point. Very briefly, as an aside on that, just a quick shout out to Twitter, as it's kind of my preferred platform of choice. But three main things I just wanted to highlight why I personally find it a really good platform in case you're thinking about making a profile or using it a bit more. So I find it really good for networking, and actually during the PhD to kind of get away a bit from the isolation of it. So I'm meeting people, you can meet people, talk to people from all over the world that are kind of going through similar things. So if I was struggling, there'd always be people with advice or people who had gone through similar things. And there's accounts like @OpenAcademics, which just bring together academics and communicators from all over the world, just really good for finding out about different people in different situations. Also then, second, there's the science communication angle. So again, with Twitter, as I said, in a character limited space, how do you get across your research? And there's hashtags like #ScienceFromHome. Over the past year or so, this kind of really built up, people kind of making videos from home, sharing their amazing science and art. I wanted to highlight at the bottom left, the Global Science Show. This is run by an amazing science communicator called Sam Langford. And if you want to be part of kind of a bigger program of science events, like an online science festival, I really recommend checking that out, kind of signing up and getting involved with that. And last, really just representation. So for me, it's mainly been to do with the LGBTQ+ community. And over the past few months, I'm learning and hopefully becoming more open about talking about my sexuality. So for me, that's why I wanted to highlight the hashtag #BiInSci. So I'm bisexual, work in science communication, and I've found Twitter a really nice way to kind of get involved with and feel the support from the LGBTQ plus community. Because I must admit that was something that was never ever mentioned or highlighted during my PhD. So again, that felt quite isolating. Whereas from Twitter, I've found a much greater sense of community, and the LGBTQ plus in STEM community are just amazing. So a slight aside, but back to these kind of 6 aspects. Hopefully that's just given you a bit of a flavor of areas of science communication, and obviously these can be pushed into more to find out more about those areas as well. And one of the great things about this was building my sort of local networks, and leading on to the kind of 2 jobs in SciComm. It was towards the end of my PhD when I then reached out to these networks, just saying, you know, I'm interested in science communication, I'm finished my PhD, what jobs are available? From having these networks, it was then really useful to hear about and apply for different jobs in SciComm. And very luckily, that led on to my first job after the PhD. So as I said, I graduated in 2018, and from reaching out to my network, found out a lot more about jobs within science communication. And the first job I had was as a science presenter and outreach lead at a company called Developing Experts. So this is a ed tech or education technology startup company in Norwich. And what they do is they make a kind of online program of science education resources. So lesson plans, little videos, teacher training, blogs and articles, and schools can then subscribe to that and get access to all these lessons. So it can help teachers that aren't specialists in science, but also homeschooling educators to kind of teach science in different ways. And my role there, science presenter outreach lead, I was at the company for about a year. On the science presenter side, and that photo in the bottom left, made lots of videos, so little explainer videos, activities people could do from home, and also interviewed lots of scientists as well. So it was about showing the wider applications of a topic. So if I was doing a lesson about animals, perhaps we'd go to a farm, film some cows, talk to some farmers, or, you know, I'd go to the UEA in Norwich and talk to someone that used frogs and why they were using that and how that linked back to the lesson. And then on the right is kind of the more outreach side, which came a bit later on into the job, but really just going to events and trying to show off some of the resources we'd made. So that photo on the right is from Norwich Science Festival back in 2018. And I guess there's a bit of the business aspect as well, like getting people to subscribe to the system as well. What I thought I'd do on this slide was just really highlight, looking back, what I saw as kind of I've called it pros and cons, but really, you know, what I enjoyed about it, perhaps what wasn't so good, the kind of bumps, as Kirsty put it. I think it's quite a nice way of sort of explaining, you know, looking back at this job, which I finished in 2019. So on the positive side, with this being a startup, so the company is only 3 or 4 years old when I joined. So it's a really kind of fast-paced environment. It's quite exciting actually to see a company so new grow. So in the first few months, it grew from maybe 6 to 8 of us to kind of 30, 35 of us very, very rapidly, as kind of loads of money was coming into the company and the structures and systems were starting to form. And within that, the second bullet point, huge variety of tasks that I could get involved with and lots of responsibility quite early on. So as I mentioned, the science presenting and outreach, but also representing the company at conferences, the writing aspect as well, sort of blogging, sort of managing a videography team that did all the amazing editing for the videos as well. And the third bullet point, again, it really helped with building science communication networks, because going out and interviewing people, going to events really helped to kind of build that local network. The bottom 2 bullet points I've separated as these are perhaps more on the not so good side, and a lot of it is linked to it being sort of the other side, the other face of it being a startup. So particularly when I started, there was definitely a lack of overall structure. So yeah, it was exciting doing things day to day, week to week, but the kind of structure, the system just weren't in place. So a lot of the work was actually just developing that. And that was quite laborious at times. And it really got away from what I wanted to do, which was the interviewing, the video production and things like that. And the final bullet point, the job insecurity. So again, with it being a startup, you get real highs and lows with the company based on when the money's coming in or not coming in, as it may be. And unfortunately, this all came to a head after about a year of being there when a big deal didn't come through. So myself and 15 to 20 colleagues all lost our jobs over a few months. So I think it was the week after Christmas so January 2019, I sort of went back into work for a few days, called into a meeting. Oh, we're not able to keep you on anymore. So the company couldn't sustain the size it had expanded to because that big deal hadn't come through. And as I said, unfortunately, it was myself, probably about 20 other people as well over the course of a few months. So that's just perhaps another side to think about with startup companies. But from that third bullet point, of kind of building the networks, I went back to what I did after my PhD. I reached out to these networks again, said, look, I've lost my job. I'd still love to work in science communication engagement. What adverts are there that I can apply to? And fortunately, from kind of building and sustaining those networks, that led on to the job role that I've done most recently and finished really recently. And that is with Norwich Science Festival. And this was working as an events and marketing coordinator. So Norwich Science Festival takes place in the October half term, and it's based in Norwich City Centre with the Forum and the Forum Trust, but also loads of partner organisations kind of around the city. The Norwich Research Park, amazing team at UEA events as well. And it's just, in a normal year, it's just everything that perhaps a science festival could be, but with lots of areas to expand. So, it's hands-on activities, family shows, some adult events where you can have a drink and listen to a pint of science talk, or some X-rated nature, I think one was back in 2019, as well as poster exhibitions, galleries and training. So lots of different aspects. And the job role this time was more, I guess, perhaps behind the scenes. So, developing experts on in front of the camera, producing those materials. This was kind of the events and marketing more coordinator role for those big events. And as well as putting the main festival, a couple of little projects just wanted to highlight. So one bottom left, the SciComms East. This is a science communication training conference in Norwich. Last happened back in 2019. So that was sort of a mini project. And the nice thing as part of that was getting to create and make a training workshop about social media for scientists. So it's kind of helping to run it, but also get onto that kind of training side as well, which I found quite interesting. And then the bottom right photo with the bee, this is just really just to highlight a bit more of the marketing side, sort of themed events around the marketing. So I think this was for the brochure launch in summer of 2019 with a bee theme, and that kind of linked with radio, TV, appearances for the team in this case, and to highlight then what's happening for the festival that year. So again, before I finish up, just wanted to kind of, again, highlight, looking back, what I see as like the good parts, the perhaps not so good parts of this job, the little bumps that have come up along the way. As I said, I've done 2 science festivals, 2019, 2020, and my contract's kind of just come up to finishing in December. But overall, top point, really strong team environment. So it's a much smaller team than Developing Experts was before they got rid of lots of people. There's 2 core people, the science festival producer, the marketing manager, and then other people like myself, other interns and the wider team. And I think I just realized how much I appreciated a really strong team environment, one that was always supportive, really helpful, really intelligent, had that big sort of scheme, and just loved what they're doing and were amazing at what they were doing as well. And I think that's, for looking forward, that's something I'm really going to be looking for in a job. And the second point, kind of the larger scale projects we're working on, were a huge step up from anything we did at Developing Experts. So, I mean, the nicest thing was like I was getting to talk to and work with and have a coffee with these people that I've been following on Twitter for years. And now I could actually like see their shows and learn from that, these really, really experienced science communicators and trainers, and actually to be a part of that and really highlighting their amazing work and the amazing work in Norwich, I just really, really enjoyed. And then the third point, kind of through the Science Festival in 2019, it was this big in-person event that I talked of, but last year for 2020, due to COVID pandemic, the festival was officially cancelled and replaced with the online program. But as part of that, kind of got to see both sides. And I think moving forward, festivals quite interested in doing a blended kind of festival. I think the online has been particularly useful for access to people outside Norwich, and also like the longevity, so things being kept on YouTube for a while afterwards. And then the bottom bit are basically related, I guess, to the less good side, and it's all really around COVID, to be honest. So the job has always been part-time. There's obviously nothing wrong with working part-time. If that works for you, I think that's great to have that as an option. Personally, I'm looking for something more full-time, and that's where Science Festival was going. We were trying to do like a year-round program event, so lots of community events and more training, but COVID pandemic, festival got cancelled, and that's sort of the bottom point. And that links actually to where I'm at the moment. So my contract hasn't been extended for this year. There's a lot of question marks around what's happening with the festival, who's going to be involved with it. So I'm now back on the joys of job hunting again. I mean, it's still quite fresh. And, you know, there is possibility potentially for the Science Festival to be, you know, brought back and for me to be brought on, but uncertain times, I guess, which, you know, isn't just to me. It's kind of for everyone at the moment. So final slide, really, before I finish talking, just a few final thoughts, really, which I've tried to kind of emphasize. So the top one, SciComm, science communication, can mean a lot of different things. And as Kirsty said as well, within public engagement, that can have loads of different faces to it, different job roles. And I really recommend just reaching out to people, trying out things that you can that are linked with your university, local community, just to give those a go, particularly in a supportive environment. So in my PhD, I must admit, my supervisor didn't really have a public engagement sort of program or side of the research. Lots of the stuff I did, I just did, to be honest. I didn't actually run much by her, I just did it. And eventually, I think I did win her and the group over by the end, where actually the whole team did, we were part of the Learning Zone at the Latitude Festival, which is a music festival back in 2018. So that felt like a nice end almost to the PhD, with it being the whole group and just our research, but it can be quite tough. Actually, as was mentioned in the previous Q&A, getting involved with that from the start. And as said, I just did it. I think there was an expectation that I'd have to catch up with research on the weekend, but there are supervisors that can be a lot more supportive of it. Second point, probably a bit obvious. Keep your CV, LinkedIn up to date. You know, I don't really like LinkedIn as a platform at all, but what it is good for, in my opinion, is a digital CV. So now I'm applying for jobs again, can just copy and paste, because I just shoved everything onto there that I did, everything I could think of. So now I can copy and paste that, tailor it to my jobs, and it's just useful for that, even though I think LinkedIn can be a bit of an awful platform, to be honest, sometimes. And then the bottom point, perhaps a bit more personal point, just to really say you aren't a failure if you leave academia. I think when I was first looking into SciComm, saying I wanted to work in that, there were lots of comments and suggestions that I was somehow some failed academic, failed research, that I couldn't handle the research. And really just to emphasize that whatever you do, whether that's in academia, not in academia, I think as long as you're following your passions, doing things you enjoy, then I think that's amazing. And you certainly aren't a failure, whatever you do, and you're not a failure if you leave academia. So on that note, really just to say thank you so much for letting me be involved in this. And at the top right, I've just put my Twitter handle is @SamFRowe, and my email is samrowescience@gmail.com in case you have anything afterwards. But of course, happy to chat about things now. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Sam. That was excellent. I really enjoyed your talk. I will briefly resume with the Twitter. You should all go and follow Sam on Twitter, because his feed is just so wholesome, honest. It's a good energy. It's worth it. I promise you, just go and do it. And actually, this reminds me of the importance of Twitter, because I joined it quite recently, and the platform is just so powerful. You can really find your tribe, you can find your people, and you can get professional connections, I think, quite easily. And also the message can spread so efficiently on Twitter. It's amazing. So I would just echo what you said before, and just if anybody's considering getting a Twitter account, go for it. It's really good.
I think just to quickly say as well, I highlighted the LGBTQ+ community, but there's also similar communities and resources and support for other marginalized groups as well. So that's just the one I wanted to particularly highlight as I'm part of it. But yeah, there's lots of other groups that where you can get support and find that community as well.
Absolutely. So this brings me back to the beginning. I was thinking, was there like an aha moment in the beginning when you realized, oh, actually, science communication, that's the right path for me? Because I guess leaving academic environment can be quite difficult, even because of the mindset, because of many things. Did you have like a moment when you felt like, this is the thing I want to do, this is my call?
Yeah, I must admit, it was the first ever kind of outreach event I did. It was in 2015, so halfway through my PhD. The idea was to make a simple poster, and you just stood in the middle of Norwich City Centre in the Forum building and talked to everyone that walked past. And I think that was really the first view of, one, creating a poster that wasn't figures and text and references. Actually, it was more about images. And I just had the most interesting conversations I've ever had about renewable energy and solar energy, and seeing people coming from different angles. And as part of that, that was linked with the Norfolk network that I mentioned. And it was from that I then got membership of the Norfolk network, and it kind of snowballed from there, actually. So there was that joint event that, again, I don't even think I told my supervisor I was doing it, to be honest. I think I just went and did it because it was organized through UA Events and Outreach. So I just kind of contacted them. But yeah, I just loved being there, chatting to people. They probably had the hardest questions I've ever had, harder than anything in the PhD Viva. But it was more about, why are you doing it? What is the actual impact? How's this going to impact my life? And I find those questions and what I was then thinking about a lot more interesting.
Absolutely get that. It's very nice. I was also thinking, could you maybe introduce the Pint of Science concept in case there's somebody who doesn't know what it is?
Yeah, sure. So Pint of Science is a worldwide festival, and it takes place normally in May each year. So this year it's happening as a virtual festival over a week in May. And the idea is that I think it's over about 45 or 50 UK cities. Teams of local volunteers put together live shows and social media activities. So as part of that, I'm what's called like the city coordinator level. So I put together our city's response for that. But within that, I'm basically, it's a team of volunteers that myself and Jansu, who's the other city coordinator, help manage and put together. But it's the volunteers that really do all the amazing and hard work. Jansu and I just kind of oversee that and talk to the central team. So yeah, this May, we've got 3 live shows coming up. And yeah, if you're looking for sort of voluntary experience, either the coordination side or actually the presenting, I really recommend getting in touch with your local branch. Most cities have it, or if not, I'm sure the central team would love to hear from you from putting that together.
Absolutely. I think there's one going in Glasgow, as far as I know. I haven't been there, but I think there should be one. So that's a good idea. Yeah, so I guess actually we are surprisingly tight on time here, which I'm quite surprised because time just flows by so quickly when I'm having a good time. So one final question I'm seeing in the box is from Matthew, and he was actually asking about important trends or maybe hashtags to check on Twitter or Instagram to kind of get into the community. So
yeah, certainly hashtag SciComm, hashtag Science from Home, kind of looking for those very particular areas. And then accounts like, the Open Academics, there's Academic Chatter, actually even the Global Science Show. If you're looking for they have their own kind of account and profile. If you're looking for other science communicators and some of their content, really recommend checking those out, either the people that follow them, the people that follow the things they share as well. Yeah, I'm sure there are loads more than that, but that might be a good place to start to kind of find other people to then, I guess the nice thing about Twitter, you can always just like follow their followers and follow their followers, etc. So.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Sam. That was excellent. I really